Today's topic is more tips from classic writing guides. If you've got 5 minutes, I've got 5 tips for you from Natalie Goldberg's classic book, Writing Down the Bones. When I first started doing these YouTube videos, one of my very first one was to introduce writers to 5 of my favorite reference books for writers. 5 books that I thought every writer should have. At that time, I told you that I think that every writer needs to learn the craft. Writers don't spring alive fully developed. They need to develop their craft. One of the ways of doing that is to access the wisdom of people who have taught writing and have written for many years. And there are some really good books out there. There's some really bad ones, but there are some really good ones. In my last episode, we discussed William Zinsser's book On Writing Well, which was the first book I picked up when I started my writing career 30 years ago, or more than 30 years ago now. In today's episode, I'm going to share 5 more tips from another classic writing book that I think every writer ought to own. And of course, as I mentioned at the beginning, the name of the book is Writing Down the Bones, Freeing the Writer Within. Now let me tell you something about the author first. Natalie Goldberg is an American writer and writing teacher. She has written over 15 books, memoirs, novels, and writing guides. And she spent a lot of her time doing writing workshops and helping new writers and older writers to write better. Her first writing book was called Writing Down the Bones. The book was published in 1986, and you might think, wow, that's an old book. But that's the actual definition of what a classic is. A classic book is one that stands the test of time. And I think that Writing Down the Bones certainly has stood the test of time and has been republished in new editions for years ever since then. When it was first published in 1986, I got my first copy. I actually lent it to somebody at one time and had to buy a new copy of it more recently. Now here are my favorite tips from Writing Down the Bones. Tip number 1, there is no assurance that because we wrote something good 2 months ago, we will do it again. Whenever you write something really great that you think is really great, it might just be a fluke. You may never be able to do it again, but you can increase the chances of being able to do it again by practicing. Here's my second tip from Natalie's book. Like running, the more you do it, the better you get at it. I've said this before myself. I can't understand new writers who think that they're going to be able to write well without practicing. It doesn't matter what you're learning to do, whether it's skiing downhill or it's running a marathon. You have to practice. You have to work up to your goal. So writing is no different. You need to practice your craft. Here's Natalie's tip number 3. Talent is like a water table under the earth. You tap it with your effort. Talent is not enough. I think I actually read a writing book one time called Talent is Not Enough. It's wonderful to have talent, and the really successful writers do have some underlying talent. But without practice, without putting that talent to work and really making use of it and working really hard, talent isn't going to get you anywhere as a writer. Here's Natalie's tip number 4, which is an interesting one. If you want a room to write in, just get a room. Don't make a big production of it. This is interesting because I think it's part of the ritual that writers go through to figure out where they're going to write. If you want a special place to write and you have space in your home to do it, make yourself a writing space. But what Natalie's suggesting here is don't spend so much time and thought and psychic energy in figuring out where your desk should be, what posters you should have on the wall, how you should have your plants arranged in front of you. So much time organizing your space to write that you use up all your writing time. Just get at it. And for some people, that writing space might be sitting on a park bench or sitting at a table in a cafe. But just get writing. And here's Natalie's tip number 5 that I love. Anything you do fully is an alone journey. And writing, like many other pursuits that you put your whole heart and soul into, is a solitary journey. And I think what Natalie is suggesting to us here is that you have to recognize the fact that it's something that you do yourself. If you spend more time talking to other writers and asking them how they do things and asking them for feedback and giving them feedback and commiserating with them, you've kind of missed the point about writing, because it is solitary and it doesn't get done if you don't sit down and do it yourself. So pay attention to how much time you're spending with other writers. Writing Down the Bones has lots of other terrific ideas and a lot of writing exercises in it as well. I highly recommend Natalie Goldberg as a writing teacher, and I highly recommend Writing Down the Bones. But if you haven't got time to read it and you want to spend your time writing, those are my 5 big tips from the book. Talk to you soon. Subscribe to Write, Fix, Repeat, and maybe I can help you improve your writing knowledge and skills. 5 tips at a time.